Welcome back to the Weekend Ball Podcast. Today, I am welcomed by my good friend Scott Witter, who is also a Dillon Brooks aficionado. Scott, thanks so much for coming on and taking the time with us. And obviously, I was with you all of yesterday, and we had a blast at the game where Canada just absolutely walloped France. And I was probably on pins and needles for the first uh, a quarter and a half, and then obviously the second half was like just blissful. So Scott, first I just want to just tell the listeners and people just about your Dillon Brooks story, because yesterday in the media center, because that was just pretty hilarious, and I don't know if we can call you part of the media, but I don't know if you'd necessarily want to be called part of the media.
Yeah. I don't. I think it's an insult to find members of the media to actually call me a member of the media. But you know, it's funny because I'm more of a big fan, super fan here. People are familiar with me. I just do a lot on Twitter, right? And that's the forum. And
Can you just
the
tell
media.
people how you applied for the FIBA accreditation as Twitter?
Yeah, that's I was just going to get into that. So, we know media is changing and social media is a big distribution arm for all sorts of media now. So on a whim, I said, "Hey, why don't I apply for a media credentials and a media pass?" Not thinking I'd get it, but hey, why not? You and I talked about this. A good lesson in life. You don't get anything unless you ask for it. And what's the worst they're going to say? No, right? So turns out I think you applied for yours and got your approval in a week or so.
Yeah, give or
I
take.
think I got mine in a few months. So a couple weeks before I was about to head to Indonesia, I get an email from FIBA saying I was approved for media credentials. What that probably tells me is there's just not a lot of Canadian media here, right? I think
Well,
you and
there's
I
it's three.
might be
It's
three of
three.
us,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
three. So they probably went down the list, and I don't have a publication. I don't have my own podcast. I kind of guest on a lot of your guys' podcasts. So they kind of say, "What's your affiliation?" I was just like, Twitter. So I show up, and there's my name, Scott Witter, and next to me says Twitter journalist. So here we are. That's it, and it's kind of worked out, and it's been a lot of fun. Again, I'm not a professional. I really don't know what I'm doing in terms of equipment and video capture and all that sort of stuff. So this is a new thing for me, and I just kind of I think I was DMing with Blake Murphy, and he said, "Dude, just treat this as like an Uber fan experience that you get backstage passes to a concert, and that's the way I'm treating this. I'm going to try to document what I can and give people an inside look, and maybe ask some stupid questions and wear some funny T-shirts and try to get some reactions and just have fun with it." So it was a great first experience, great first game.
Well, with that and just you being part of the media, I think the number one rule in media is don't become the story. And yesterday you might have become a bit of the story. So tell us a little bit about the Dillon Brooks. You wore his T-shirt to
Yeah.
the press availability, and definitely some Canadian players noticed it after the game.
Yeah. So we we got a media package, all the rules and regulations that we're supposed to follow. And the number one rule in the media presser is like, you're not supposed to show support for the team, you're not supposed to wear jerseys. And I was like, no, so I had already bought my own tickets. So I think I treated this as like, hey, I'm gonna put on my Canada basketball jersey and wear a Canadian flag headband and Canadian flag socks and go sit in my seats for the actual game. And then I think I ran off in the start of the fourth quarter, took all that sort of stuff off. And instead of just a kind of a plain shirt, I brought kind of a silly little shirt of that I made myself of Dillon Brooks in his kind of villain look when he had kind of straightened his hair and had this kind of gothic, almost vampire look, and kind of made a silly little T-shirt out of that. Threw that on because I didn't think other people would really care or recognize it, or really didn't stand out for Canada. It was a little more like of a little subtle nod. And there we are kind of in the front row of the mix zone, and a few guys were kind of busting up laughing. Dwight Powell's the first one to kind of roll up, and kind of immediately saw it, had a laugh, pointed at it, kind of tapped Lou Dort. Lou looked, kind of gave me some knuckles and laughed. And then when Dillon Brooks, he was late to come out because I think he was pulled off to the side, did some
A rash
one-on-ones,
had him. Yeah.
rash at him. So he was the last guy to come out, I think.
Mm.
Good. So after the game, we're down in the mix zone where you get to kind of interact with the players. Dwight Powell's the first one that comes out, and he immediately saw it, kind of laughed, pointed at it. I popped a little video up on that. And he kind of grabbed Lou Dort. Lou Dort saw it and gave a fist bump. So those guys were kind of chuckling to themselves, and then took a while for Dillon Brooks to come out. He was I think last off the floor. He was pulled off to the side by Arash for a little bit of an interview, and then he was stopped by some of the TV media and was being asked questions, and I was kind of right there next to him, recording. And then at the end of his interview there, he kind of looked over, saw it, kind of laughed, tapped me in the chest, and kind of walked off. So that was pretty funny. And then the presser, I just kind of put this up. Canada comes out during the press conference, and we're both sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
Shay's there just chilling. The lady is introducing kind of Shay and Jordi, and she's about to ask a question, and he just kind of looks at me, does a double look, and then just kind of smiles and laughs. And then he was asked a question by the girl, and he immediately had to like collect himself.
Yeah.
So he almost cracked him
Do you
up.
think he
But
noticed it's you, or
oh
like?
yeah, no, he looked right at me and just laughed, like he chuckled amongst himself, and then
Okay.
didn't quite hear the question from the lady. So yeah,
How
whatever,
did
just
how did that
being
just make
stupid.
how did that make you feel? This as such a huge Canada basketball fan and following these guys for so long, to them be chuckling with you and kind
Yeah,
of laughing with you. Just what did that make you feel like?
it's fun, man. Like I'm not really I'm not a guy chasing autographs and things like
Mm.
that. It's just kind of fun to get a little wink and a nod interaction with these guys. You follow them, you sort of know who they are. It's just kind of funny getting acknowledged like that. That's all. Just kind of good memories. I'll remember it. We got it on tape. Something to kind of kick back and laugh about and tell stories about later on.
So is day two like torture chamber t-shirt or
Might
something?
be.
Might be
Yeah,
okay. So there's
might
some
be.
cooking up.
I
These
got
are
a few
cooking
other
up.
ones. I got a few
Okay.
other ones. So we'll see. We'll see what
Are
kind
these
of.
Canadian basketball top secret things that people can't know about, or is this you can
I
let
think
us?
I posted them all on Twitter.
Okay,
So I
okay,
kind of a
very
couple months ago, I just stayed up late one night, maybe was a little intoxicated, and just started making t-shirts.
good.
Started
That's not what I
altering
do when
pictures.
that's not what I do when I'm inebriated, but I'll definitely think about that next time, is just to make t-shirts
Yeah, you
of
never know.
Canadian basketball players. But Scott, to move on to just the game itself, and I talked to S. Berahini a little bit yesterday for about 20 minutes, and I was just on cloud nine. I did spend my night watching Shay's highlights and the Canadian team's highlights maybe 10 times. I was pretty infatuated by the result, obviously looking at how they just played. But for you, how big of a win was that? And just for the program, Michael Grange wrote a really good piece and really said, like, this feels like a turning point. How do you feel about just how monumental maybe this win was?
Yeah, it was massive. You know, I don't know what to say. I landed that day after 24 hours of traveling. I was running on adrenaline. It was I was anxious. Sat down in my seats next to some pretty cool Lebanese fans. We were talking about it, and I'm like, I think I've said it before. I don't know. I'm anxious. 50-50. I don't know what's going to happen. And that first half, you seemed to relax after the second and a half quarter. It took me till, all the way through halftime and into the third. And I was just still seeing, like, the shots weren't falling, and it was getting kind of frustrating to me to see Shea rimming stuff in and out. Lou Dort missing wide open jumpers left and right. Barrett wasn't having a great game, or his shot wasn't falling. He was still facilitating and whatnot. So, after that first half, I felt we were getting pushed around a little bit up front. We weren't getting like to the rim. Guys were kind of pulling up, a little wary of Rudy there. Yabusele and Lasort were kind of pushing and shoving guys around a little bit. And then third quarter, it just broke open. The shots started falling. It seemed like the pace started opening up a little bit. Rudy seemed invisible out there. And away we go. So this was just massive. Massive in a game where RJ Barrett goes 1 for 10 and scores 4 points. He was 1 for 7 from 3. Lou Dort was 1 for 7. You still have those guys. They're going to show up from game to game. It was the other guys kind of stepping up here. Kelly, great game. Obviously, Shea was Shea. Nikhil had a great game. But this statement game, as far as I can see, it's just, this is the one that just says, hey, we're here. We could dominate top teams in the world. France is 5th ranked in the world. They're 4th ranked in this tournament, right? Or they're 3rd ranked. And it's just to be able to do that and have a 30-point win, I think is just monumental. And I think we'll be talking about this. Hopefully the rest of the games break this way, but if so, we'll be talking about this game for a long time.
Yeah, I just think the manner in which they were able to win this game is as important as the win itself, in terms of just what it means for the program, right? It's beating a perennial powerhouse in FIBA basketball in France, who's medaled at the last. I don't know if they medaled at Eurobasket in 2017,
Yep.
but so maybe it's been
I don't know,
4th.
2017. I can't remember. Yeah.
Anyways, but they've medaled in their last 3 competitions at the very least. Obviously the Olympic silver medal, and I wouldn't say they easily could have won the game against the US, but it was a close game. They lost by 5-6 points. It wasn't 30-point blowout like Canada did today. And this team, the French team, maybe isn't as good as they were in 21, but it's not a completely different roster. It's essentially the same starting 5. And so just to beat down on such a talented team, such a team that's played with each other for so long, has that chemistry that Canada lacks. It was just so impressive. It was just so impressive. And I want to give. Yeah.
I was gonna say, do you think, at that presser we saw it, Evan Fournier comes out, asks, what he thought of the game, and point blank, he just said, we played like shit. How much of this do you think was, France playing like shit, or was this, the story still here, Canada just dominating and forcing that issue, and or do you think, part of this was just a crap game by France? I don't know if I really saw that, but
I didn't see it, and where I'd point to is just lack of shooting for Canada. They only shot the 3-point ball. They're at 31% yesterday, right? So when you have a big blowout, you almost equate it to, okay, well, guys just shot better. They shot, instead of shooting at their normal clip of 35%, they shot 42% or 50%, right? It's small sample size. 1 second. Yeah, sorry about that. My the hotel guy came to try to clean the room, and I had to tell him no. But to get back to our point, if Canada had shot the lights out from 3, I'd feel okay, maybe they just had a really good shooting day, and they weren't even pedestrian. They missed a lot of wide open shots. Maybe Lou Dort shouldn't be taking all those threes, but at the same time, when in RJ, they're wide open.
Yeah, he's got to take those.
And
he's got to hit them.
You win by 30 points, and you don't shoot that efficiently.
Yeah,
I don't think Canada got lucky, or the scoreboard. Maybe it's 10 point. Maybe it was more.
Yeah.
If France plays better, it's more closer to a 20-point game. I didn't see that because I thought France, the whole game, it was really hard for them to get good shots.
Yeah.
Canada consistently got good shots, right? The defense was very different. I thought Canada's defense was really good the whole game. Most of the easy looks that France got was in transition or almost just discombobulated on Canada's end. I remember
Mhm.
Fournier made a three, and it was just this weird um Olynyk just lost him in transition and really shouldn't have, right?
Mhm.
So they weren't getting all these good looks. Well, Canada in the offense was getting really, really good looks, and they
Yeah.
weren't even making them. And it's funny because a French media talked to me after the game slightly and said, if we play you guys, we can beat you guys. Sure, maybe. But,
Mhm.
uh, and they talked about how poorly France played. Sure, if France played their best game, maybe it's a close game. Maybe France wins by 2 or 3 points, but
Mhm. Mhm.
it did not feel to me as though, oh, France was so bad.
Yeah.
Maybe they shoot a bit better and they get closer to, it's more an 8 to 10 point win. But the fact
Yeah.
that Canada didn't shoot well, really the whole first half, 3 of 13, and that's why I was so
Yeah.
optimistic because, and I wrote it in my notes. I said, how the heck is Canada up in this game after missing everything, and Shea being so inefficient and RJ being so inefficient, and Powell and Olynyk were in foul trouble within the first 8 9 minutes of the game, and they went with a bench unit, and that was really the only time France took a bit of a lead in the game,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
when Canada put a five out, put a five-man bench unit, which I disagreed
Yeah.
with, even with the foul trouble. But overall, I just think this team really showed that they're here for real. And for me, maybe I'm getting too ahead of myself, and I'd love to know what you think. But this team, watching that game, it looked like a team that's on the precipice to not only make the Olympics, but go really deep in this tournament.
Yeah.
And that was a medal winning performance,
Yeah.
maybe even a gold medal winning performance. Now,
Yeah.
can they replicate it? I don't know. But the way they played is good enough to beat the United States of America. If they play
Yeah.
that way, they can beat them. Um,
Yeah.
so
Here,
we'll see.
here's come one thing I'll point out. Just to kind of touch on France again for a second here. They
Mhm.
did shoot 6 for 28 from three, 21%. I think that's going to be abnormal for France. So I can
Mhm.
kind of see a little bit of what the French media is saying. Fournier was 3 for 13 from three. So now is that a lot of Canada's wings pressuring guys into bad shots,
I'd say
or were they
so.
just kind of missing open jumpers? Probably a little bit of both, but I don't think a French team with De Colo and Fournier kind of as their lead guards normally shoots 21% from three.
But
But
when I
sorry,
think of the handful of shots France made from three, other than maybe the one Fournier three I'm thinking of, DeColo made 2 or 3 really contested threes in this
yeah,
game,
yeah,
and Fournier did as well. And so you think about, okay, what are the shots they're actually making, right? Good defenses make the opponent take tough shots, and maybe sometimes
yeah,
they make them, right?
yeah,
But if you consistently make the opponent take tough shots, they're going to miss more than they make, right?
yeah,
And I felt that was as much. Now maybe they shoot 11 of 28 next time, but that's still Canada winning by 15 points, and Canada only shot
yeah,
31%. So
yeah,
it's, but again, we are biased, so I'll
yeah,
acknowledge it. And I don't know the
yeah.
French players as well as maybe you do, and their team. So I don't know if it felt that they were abnormally bad. Did you feel that?
I was caught up in the game, right?
Yeah.
I'm not really looking at them and going, oh, they're playing poorly. It's more like you're kind of more following with Canada and wringing your hands with every missed open three and things like that. But one thing I will point out though is we were concerned and talked about kind of this front court, and France is about one of the biggest teams that we're going to face. Obviously, everybody knows about Gobert, but you saw Yabusele, right? He's thick. He's just a
Huge, yeah.
big, powerful guy. Backup power forward, Matthias Lesort, another big, powerful, power forward, big, strong guy. So for me, really worried about. We just don't have the rim protection. I don't think that's necessarily going to change. But I was certainly worried about rebounding. Are we going to get outworked on the boards? The guards really need to kind of step up and do team rebounding. You saw that, guys like Shea, I think he led the team in rebounding. Brooks and Lou Dort were in there mixing it up. So get this on the game. We out rebounded France 45-35. Offensive rebounds 15 for Canada, 6 for France. That might be tail of the tape right there. That was the last thing I would have expected going into this game is for us to outwork France so heavily on the boards.
I,
Now, if we can keep that up, that might be the path to a medal contending team, because that was viewed by a lot of us as a potential weakness of this team.
No, that's a really good point. And I would say I noticed a lot of offensive rebounds in the third and fourth quarters when it felt as though France was slipping away. And maybe the one thing the French media really picked up on, and maybe this is really their point, is that when Canada made that run, France just had no answers. They maybe dropped a little bit in their intensity. They took the blow and didn't really know how to handle it, right? But at the same time, right, when Canada just destroyed them in that quarter, they only had 25 points. That's good offense. That's not great offense, right?
Yeah.
So I just overall believe that this team is just much better than France, and they have more talent. I think that's undeniable. And now they finally put it all together. And before this game and before the tournament started, I was thinking, well, they've had a bunch of good stretches where, their defense played really well against Spain, but their offense wasn't great. Then against Germany, their offense was awesome. They could not stop Germany. And it finally felt as though those two coalesced. And Jordi Fernandez deserves a lot of credit, because this team's only been together for 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. It's literally, they started on August 1st. We're August 26th now. And they played, especially even in the first half, they played like it was a playoff game. It was really, really, really intense. And they felt in unison. Their defense was really good the whole way. It never really changed. And Jordi Fernandez talked about how this team wants to be the best defensive team in the league and in the tournament. They might be. The lack of maybe rebounding and shot blocking makes me. It's hard for me to say that's necessarily the case, but on the perimeter, they just Dort and Brooks were maniacal in that third quarter. They forced all these turnovers. France, and that was one of the calling cards of France in a negative sense, was they played Australia and lost narrowly in a pre-tournament game, and they had over 20 turnovers. Last night they had 17. And so that really worked for Canada, because I know Vincent Collet, the French coach, talked about how we can't let Canada to get in transition. And by the end of the game, Canada was getting in transition all the time, pushing the pace. I don't know if you saw it, Jordi Fernandez all the time is saying push, 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 push.
Yeah.
And I just love that, right? Shea going downhill was amazing. It was just such a amazing performance. And just as a Canadian fan, and I'm sure you feel the same, that's just been waiting for everyone to show up and play well together at the same time, just to see it finally come to fruition. It really felt like I was a dream, also because it's my first time being a journalist and being there. And I was talking to my dad today, and he said, you would have paid so much money just to be at this game, and now I'm a journalist covering it, and after the game asking Shea. So that's pretty sick on my part, but just phenomenal. And I think I tweeted about you and Dan Shulman and Blake Murphy and our friend Matty Ireland. Jonathan Chen as well. Just people that have been diehards of this program for so long, and it's always heartbreak and misery. And maybe that happens again. We're not there, but it
Yeah,
really
yeah,
feels as though there's a big title shift coming. And for me, the biggest thing I'll take out of this game is they looked like a medal contender.
yeah,
And I didn't know if I would really feel that way in this tournament. And maybe they play poorly the next two games and
yeah,
lose to Spain or whatever, but that
yeah.
it feels unlikely at this point.
Yeah. Well, they certainly showed up. And I think there were some quotes out there on Jordi or some video telling them that, hey, we got 5 game 7s, right?
Yeah.
And they showed up for a game 7 for this first one, and they brought it. So, I expect them to kind of do that for the next 4, and then we'll see what happens, right? So game by game, it's only one game, but they got off on the right foot and looked amazing. So let's keep it going. You and I were having a blast here. We're seeing, haven't seen a ton of the city yet. Obviously, I just got in yesterday, so we're gonna get out there on an off day, or at least I am, and do a little bit of exploring. Maybe catch either the Spain or Brazil game tonight. But it's kind of a fun city. I want to give a shout out to the Indonesian fans. They were fantastic. They showed up. Sounds like, you go to these different countries, and you wonder if they really know the game, and they're mad at the wrong whistles or clapping for the wrong plays, but they seem pretty tuned in. I mentioned this on Twitter. I just thought it was really funny to see, we saw this in the preamble games with Germany, Dillon Brooks getting booed every time he touches the ball, and stuff like that. But so the Indonesian fans were doing that as well. Sucks. People are just going on rumors and reputation, and they probably really never sat down and watched him. But you saw that change throughout the game, and by the fourth quarter, they were screaming MVP for Dillon Brooks. So they saw his hard work, they saw what he was doing, they saw the hustle, they saw the key plays he was involved, and we're like, dude, we were wrong. This guy's a baller, and they kind of expressed that by the fourth quarter. That was really cool to see for me.
And with that, with Dillon Brooks, I talked about it yesterday with S, but just he has good shot selection for Canada, and if that's going to be the case when he goes to Houston, man, he's one heck of a player, because he brings everything you really want on the defensive end. He can shoot well enough from three. He's not really a playmaker, but he can attack the rim. He had that really nice end one,
Yeah,
which I feel in the NBA is probably an offensive flagrant on his part or something. But in FIBA, it's a defensive foul. But he just really likes the contact. He's been pretty good at finishing above the rim and really
yeah,
attacking guys, especially probably in my mind, it's because just the guys aren't as athletic, and
yeah,
similar to RJ Barrett, who's been really effective in the friendlies, not so much today. But if Dillon Brooks is this type of player and he just has good shot selection, and Houston is really getting one heck of a player, because it's been incredible to watch. And I wonder how, for him, having a guy like Shea, like RJ, maybe clearly ahead of him on the pecking order, while in
mhm,
Memphis, it's obviously Job, but Jaren Jackson isn't really a scorer. They
yeah,
have Desmond Bain is to an extent, but not really. He doesn't need the ball that much. And obviously Dillon Brooks wanted to get paid. So it'll be interesting to see how it translates for him into just the NBA this year. On a side note, but Nikhil, I talked to him yesterday at media, and he said guys have to dumb down their role, and um, I that's really interesting and fascinating to me, because it sounds as though guys recognize, hey, I'm not gonna get more than 5, 6 shots, right? Dillon Brooks had 12
mhm,
points. He had 6 shots, missed
mhm,
one, right? And for Memphis, sometimes he shoots 13, 14 times, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to give credit to the players and to Coach Fernandez for really buying it, because no one really took a bunch of bad shots other than maybe Lou Dort.
Yeah.
But he was amazing defensively, and really their point of attack defense was just phenomenal. Hounding
Yeah.
DeColo, hounding Evan Fournier, and those guys just aren't athletic enough and good enough ball handlers to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah. With Dillon, in Memphis, it's we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? Obviously, there's some maturity issues with Jaw, even though he's kind of the high profile player on that team. Got to remember, Dillon Brooks was a senior player on that team. He had been there the longest. I've certainly seen enough of him, taking bad shots, but he's almost forced into it. It's kind of end of the shot clock, ball ends up in his hands, and he's taking kind of low efficiency shots. But you're right. If he kind of embraces a role like this for Houston, they're going to get what they paid for. Despite all the shenanigans that were going on in Memphis, a lot of that was a game or an act or just what was going on behind the scenes in Memphis. Who knows? So I'm excited about this change in scenery for Dillon. I think it was well overdue, and I'm excited to see what he's gonna bring to the table for this NBA season.
How worried should we be about RJ Barrett's first game?
Not at all. I don't think. We saw what he can do. He was maybe the best player in the preliminary games. I was more worried about Shea, to be honest. It was you're kind of sitting there going, hey, is Shea able to adapt to this game? He's getting banged around a little bit. He's
I'm
running into
laughing because
people.
after this game, the first half you're on pins and needles thinking,
Yeah,
and
but
then at the end of the game you're
yeah,
thinking he's the next reincarnation
he's the
of
man,
Michael
right?
Jordan. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
So
just
we're gonna go like this. So I will feel the same way about Barrett in the next game, I'm sure. Because like I said, in that first half, I'm like, the shot's not falling, and you're wondering, is he just getting a little bit too much contact? Is he getting bumped a little bit too much, and the shot's just kind of off by a couple inches, and they're just not falling? What's going on? And then he obviously did a 180 and was fantastic the second half. And RJ, like I said, maybe wasn't needed in this game, but it wasn't falling. I think we've seen enough of RJ already that we shouldn't be worried about him. It's just going to be game to game, I guess.
it's also a bad matchup. Rudy Gobert, just a shot blocker. RJ
Oh,
loves to attack the rim. It what when RJ is going to be playing against teams that just don't have a presence of a Rudy Gobert, like a Spain, like a Germany. I really think it's going to turn around for him, and
yeah,
he's not a great outside shooter, and that's why he sometimes I believe he was 1 of 7 from three. So if
yeah,
that's the case,
yeah,
that's makes the 1 of 10 look much worse, right?
yeah,
Because okay, he missed 3 shots from inside the paint. Okay, that
yeah,
happens.
yeah,
So and he still had 5 assists, I think maybe it was 5 rebounds. I'm not sure, but
yeah,
overall still effective, and he still commands a lot of attention. And I felt as though the defense really, when Shea was off the court, a couple stretches in the second quarter, they really collapsed around RJ, and he was pretty good at passing. He's a good
yeah,
passer. People don't really
yeah,
think about that often,
yeah,
but
yeah,
he's an above average passer and playmaker. And
yeah,
I'm not too worried at all. And that's another reason. So if you're a French supporter and saying, well, glass half full, well, we just missed all our threes. Well,
yeah.
our second best
So
player
did,
can't 1 of 10, and we still beat you by
yeah,
30.
yeah,
So I find that really interesting from the French angle. I do wonder how much motivation the French had, considering they don't have the Olympics on the line, but they're a proud group. I'm not saying they don't care or not as competitive, but
yeah,
I just wonder if deep down it's just a bit different for the Canadians, where we need this. It's a game
yeah,
seven, and
yeah,
it's a bit harder for the French to really feel that way, no matter what
yeah.
they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out too. Like you mentioned, like Nikhil was really the point guard when Shea was off the floor, and I think he did a great job ball handling. Maybe he's not the playmaker that you necessarily want, but took
He's
care of the ball.
he's not a bad playmaker though,
No, no,
but
but
he's not a point
it's
guard. He's not a point
yeah,
guard. Yeah.
yeah. I think that's kind of my point. He's not that pure point guard, and I think he did a very admirable job. And his shooting was great. You know, he was 4 for 8 from three. Yeah, I think, like I said, out of that game, the only thing I would be concerned with that kind of lingers is Lu Dort's shooting. So it just hasn't been there through the preambles. He doesn't have the rep as a good shooter, and we kind of saw it again today. So, there are the solace there is he's not relied on. You don't really need him. You certainly want him to hit down those open shots at an acceptable clip, like a reasonable rate. But it's not. I don't know if we're going to live and die by his outside shooting. So, but he was 3 for 12 from the field, 1 for 7 from three. We gotta see a bit better than that.
No, I totally agree on Lou Dort. And yeah, he told me after the game just it was really nice to see one go in at the end.
Yeah,
He made 1 3. I forget when it was, but sometime in the fourth quarter.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that was definitely nice to see for him. But this team, what I really found was interesting, and I thought it was a really interesting matchup, or not a matchup, sorry, but a just to see what Jordi Fernandez did with the rotations. And what he did was really interesting because Powell and Olynyk get those two fouls less in the first quarter, and you think, oh God, this is not good. He goes to essentially a 5-man bench unit for a period of time. France comes all the way back, goes up to 7 at some point in the second quarter. And then he just brings back the starters, brings back Olynyk on two fouls pretty early in the second quarter, and the rest is history. And this team, if they just play their 7 NBA guys and maybe a Kyle Alexander for a little bit as the backup big, then Edgem sprinkled
Edgem had good
in.
minutes.
He
Yeah,
played well. Yeah.
yeah,
Again, if he's your fifth starter, or fourth, you feel happy. And for the most part, he was.
yeah,
And just you didn't really see any Trey Bell Haynes after that end of first quarter, second quarter minutes. And I believe if I'm Jordi Fernandez, that's what I do. In all the big
yeah,
games against Lebanon, you are playing a 5-man bench unit. If
yeah,
not, you're going to 7, and that you're playing all your guys all at
yeah,
once.
yeah,
And maybe not that extent against Latvia, but probably maybe we see a 5-man bench unit because uh, Canada's all but supplanted itself as winning the group. But it's really important to beat Latvia as well, because of
hmm,
how it works, because it continues into the second round. So it's not a
yeah,
normal, oh, we get out of the group first, we're
yeah,
good.
yeah,
It still really, really matters.
yeah.
But I
The
believe in the second round, when Canada plays a team probably like Spain, probably Brazil, the rotations will look much more similar to what Jordy did today. But probably the next game for sure, and probably a little bit against Latvia, they'll feel more resembling the pre-tournament games,
yeah,
in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah, yeah. It's. I think we confirmed
Yeah,
that all point. Not only do all wins carry over, but all points, all plus minus carries over as well. So we saw Latvia really kind of run up the score on Lebanon. They were kind of pushing the whole way, and the mindset of that is like, let's say there's a 3-way tie somewhere, right? It's going to come down to point differential on who advances, and that carries into the second round as well, right? There are theoretical scenarios where Canada, France, Spain all split amongst each other, right? And then it's if that's the case, whoever the two that have the better plus minus end up going forward. So this is a huge win, especially against France at 30 points, right? It's just it's
it
just a
just
massive.
just for people to kind of understand maybe it a bit better. this basically supplants that Canada, if they have the same record as France, will probably have the point differential, just because I don't see Canada losing any game more than 10 or 15 points, and France just lost 30. And Canada won a
Yeah.
game by 30 that you probably thought, oh, if we
Right.
win, maybe it's 5 points, right?
Yeah.
So
That's a 60-point swing, right?
it's a huge swing. It's just a huge swing. And so it's essentially meant that Canada will make the second round, just with tiebreakers. They're not going to lose to Lebanon. No offense, Lebanon. Even if Latvia plays amazing and somehow wins, which I find very unlikely, they're going to make the second round. For the second round, maybe obviously they have to take care of business. But if they are to in my opinion, the path right now, just if you just say, hey, all we need to do is make quarters, right? The path is you beat Lebanon, obviously, Latvia and Brazil. If you win those two games, regardless of Spain, essentially with this point differential, you're going to be going to the quarterfinals. It's very unlikely.
Yeah.
I mean, do you
So,
disagree with that, or
no, don't ink it down, because anything could happen. But
no? And then you still have to
it's a
win those
big
games.
it's a
Yeah.
big point differential that France would now have to make up. Like, the only conceivable way is like I said, if assuming you take care of business against assuming Brazil's the one who gets the second round, and you take care of business there, and Latvia and Lebanon, the only feasible thing that can happen that puts Canada in trouble is, a three. Well, of course, losing to Brazil or Latvia is going to cause a whole bunch of problems. But theoretically, if you lost to Spain, and Spain, Canada, and France were all tied for win-loss record, that's just a massive point differential that France has to make up now, right?
And
So it puts Canada in a really, really good spot, even though it's not necessarily inked, right?
yeah, no, for sure. And it just really puts them in the driver's seat to make the quarterfinals, in my opinion. Anything
Yeah.
can happen, but after watching that game, it's going to be hard for me to see them losing to Latvia, even as well as they played. Lebanon is just, they were not good.
Yeah.
And they played really into Latvia's strengths because they just gave wide open threes. And
Yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
beat a team by 50 points? You make
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
shots.
Yeah.
And if a team
Yeah.
gives a lot of good shooters a lot of wide open threes, they're going to make them. So, but against a team like Canada, they're just not going to have that ability to have as many open looks. They were not very big. That was one thing I found. I don't know what you thought. I'm not going to preview Latvia too much because I do have someone, a Latvian journalist, coming on later this week to preview Latvia. But
Okay. Who
just
wasn't big? Who wasn't big? The
the
Latvians, or
Latvians, they weren't as big as the French, that's for sure. And
at the Garden Wing spots? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and just not nearly as athletic as the French. But they are a lot of really good shooters, so that's something Canada will have to be mindful of. And
Yeah. They shot 50% from three, 18 3-pointers out of 35.
but
So
it was a lot of
that is their
open
game.
looks.
Yeah, a lot of open looks, and small Lebanese guards who couldn't put pressure on those guys either. So that's going to be a massive difference.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to touch upon? Just maybe just what you thought about Jordi Fernandez as the coach, and the situation he came into with Canada, where he's taking over Nick Nurse. It's a short turnaround. He was just named the coach. It was in late June, I believe. Not fully sure, but very recently, within the last 2-3 months, and getting to know the guys, and I just thought they felt so connected for a team that's only been together for 3.5 weeks. Like, how would you just judge his coaching so far?
Yeah, it's we do get a little bit of a different perspective and a look here. A lot of what, like, my read is a little bit kind of body language and how he's kind of interacting. Body language coming back from the players. They just seem to like each other, right? He seems like he's really well accepted. A couple times on the bench, he's delivering hard messages, but it's with a smile and a smile back, and everybody kind of looks happy and liking each other. And I think he's just a good communicator, has the respect of the players. And it seems like it's a great fit so far. I've liked everything we've seen from him. He's just got kind of this easygoing, approachable personality, right?
Mhm.
And other than that, I don't have a whole lot to say because I haven't really interacted with him. It's just kind of observing from afar and seeing him and how the players are reacting to him.
What I've noticed is that just maybe a shift in his demeanor. And I found in Toronto at the training camp, he was much more happy-go-lucky, um, maybe free-spirited is too strong a word, but just very calm.
Yeah,
Everything's good. We're great. And not that the calmness necessarily left, but he became way more serious.
he's serious.
He's
Yeah,
way more serious than what he presented himself in Toronto in my mind. He
yeah,
just, and he's talking about every time I try to ask a question about any sort of rotations, he's
hmm
very tight-lipped. He said, "I'm not going to
hmm
tell anyone to anything to the enemy," and
yeah,
um, he is very good at answering stuff with a non-answer when I talk about
yeah,
his players. It's all about one day at a time, and it's
yeah,
really feels very strong every time he talks
yeah,
about it's one day at a time.
yeah,
He's a very good communicator. The players seem to like him. Shea was laughing with him yesterday at the press conference.
yeah,
He has a sense of humor,
yeah,
and I really, really like his demeanor.
yeah,
And he's a player's coach. As you said, all the players seem to like him. He every time we get the access 10, 15 minutes before the end of practice. For example, I forget if it was yesterday or the day before, but he's with Zach Edey and they're going over
mm,
film. And it's the head coach. It's not an assistant coach. It's the
hmm
head coach. And it seems very calm and measured. I saw him right before they made the cuts. I could see him talking to Kenny Cherry, and it looked like a cut kind of
yeah,
um, conversation, and it seemed very, you know, uh, I guess the right way to describe it would be very much from kind of with compassion. It wasn't,
yeah,
hey, you're
yeah,
cut, sayonara. It
yeah,
was, I know you've taken your summer to come with us. That's just the vibe. It sounded, it
yeah,
felt as though from watching him from afar. So I've been
yeah,
really impressed, and he's a FIBA guy. He's grown up with it.
yeah,
He
yeah,
knows the game. And man, they just played so together. I can't. That was the one thing I could not get over. Is just they felt like, oh, this is game one of the NBA playoffs. They've been playing with each other for 8 months. They know how to rotate. They know how to communicate. They know how they're going to play. They know their defined roles, right? As Akil and others have talked about. It was just really, really a phenomenal performance, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that because
yeah,
it was not an easy job to take over. It's NBA guys; they're not the easiest
yeah,
to get to know and get them to be all essentially tugging in the same direction. And I feel really lucky that Canada was able to maneuver out of the Nick Nurse situation, who,
yeah,
let's be honest, is not a player's coach.
yeah.
And to find a guy with so much FIBA experience, and definitely so far, there's nothing wrong I can say about him.
Yeah, big props to Rowan Barrett and Mike Bartlett for this, right? They kind of landed on their feet and hopping and skipping away, and it's the same vibe I'm getting. He's serious, but he's confident and he's calm. So I think everyone's kind of appreciating that. So it's the same thing. I got the maids at the door right now. Sorry
Oh,
about
do you?
that.
Okay. Do you need me to cut it now, or are we good to go for a little bit?
We're good to go.
Okay.
We're good to go.
I guess just, well, before I let you go, just any other takeaways from the game that you might want to talk about. I really noticed Kelly Olynyk. I thought in that second quarter he really kept that team alive in a lot of ways from the French from really getting on that run. He had that great end one. I just really liked this play. He drew the unsportsmanlike foul. which I felt was a bit of FIBA shenanigans in the good way. Just what other takeaways or standouts did you see in the game yesterday?
Yeah, certainly Kelly. Like, you got to understand, we talk about him a lot as being just a great FIBA player, and I just you see it in a game like this. He's always a 3-point threat. He's kind of hanging out well beyond. He's got great range, so he's not on the line. He's like 4 or 5 feet off the line, and it draws people out to him, right? So that is crucial for this team, and really kind of opens up the paint for guys like Shea to go to work. So that's something you see that you might not necessarily see on TV all the time. That's a huge one that stood out to me. So that I think was pretty cool to see. And to me, it's just, maybe you don't see this on TV as well, but just the guys, the wing defenders working all over the floor nonstop, the whole shot clock. And that's all of them. It's RJ, it's Lou, it's Nikhil, it's Dillon, it's Shea. Every one of those guys is working their tail off from kind of start to finish on that shot clock. So you get to kind of see that and appreciate that, of just how much effort and work these guys are doing to try to get through screens and just stick to their man and make their lives difficult. So that was really cool for me to watch in person.
Yeah. So before I let you go, I'm just gonna say it. I think this team can win the World Cup. I really believe it's possible. Now, I'm not saying they're going to or that they're the favorite, but this performance, I'm just so surprised that it came so early in a tournament. They put themselves in a great position to make the quarters now, especially potentially as the number 1 seed, then maybe a bit of a preferable draw in the quarterfinals. Just where do you think this team ends in where do you think this team will finish in the end? Is it
Yeah,
making the Olympics? Is it winning the World Cup? Is it medaling at the World Cup?
yeah.
What's maybe the most likely scenario in your mind for you, Scott?
It's tough. Obviously, we're on a high from this game, but I think both you and I said this before this tournament started. This is a medal contending team, and it has to be with the guys on this team. But we also said, who knows, things could go bad, and it could flame out. You know, I wasn't necessarily going to be end of the world or totally beat if they didn't make it to the quarterfinals, because you're having to go through 2 of the best teams in the world in Spain and France. Now that they've just annihilated France, obviously we can be pretty high about this, but I don't think it changes. I still think the United States has a little bit of a step up on everybody, just because of the depth and the caliber of players that we have. But going into this tournament, it looked like the medal contenders were Canada. Besides the United States, it was Canada, Spain, France, Australia, and Germany. Those are the ones in my mind. Serbia or Greece could sneak in there because of the weaker draw that they have. But I think a lot of Germany. They impressed me in the preamble games, and I think a lot about Australia. So we still have to go through like all of those teams just to get to the
It's really
semifinals. It's
crazy because
crazy.
it's crazy because honestly, I truly believe this. Out of the top 5 teams in this tournament, 4 of them are going to be playing each other or maybe 5 out of the 6.
5 out
Sorry,
of the
5
6.
out of the
Yeah.
6. 4 of them will only make it because Canada, Spain, and France are going to eat each other. Probably
Yeah.
it looks as though France is going to be eaten, but right now the quarterfinals, as we look at it now, would be one of Canada, Spain, and France versus most likely Germany or Australia, and
And
maybe even Luka Doncic, which is
yep,
always
Luca's there too.
you never want to see Luka in FIBA.
Can't count him
So,
out.
so comparatively to Dominican,
Yeah.
Italy, Serbia, obviously the USA. Am I missing a team? I probably am. Greece, I guess. But
Yeah.
it's just a completely different side. Lithuania is always a decent FIBA team.
Yep.
So it's
Right.
gonna be tough. But I really do think this game is mean, if they don't make the
Yeah.
quarterfinals now, I don't know what to say after a
Right.
performance like that. But they put themselves in a great position to make the quarters. And my whole thing was, you make the quarters, you get to the Olympics.
Yeah.
I I think it's
Yeah.
going to be
It's
more
I don't
nuanced
know
than
if that's
that.
necessarily
I think
true.
it's more nuanced than that
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
And but anyways, we'll
It's
see. And
yeah. So great, yeah, great win, but nothing certain yet, right? It's still just the draw that Canada has is intense. The draw, we think the Dominican Republic is the major threat, but we still have kind of Brazil, but at least Brazil's in our hands.
mhm.
Dominican Republic, it's not in our hands. We can't control what happens over there. You and I were fiercely refreshing the Dominican versus
Oh,
Philippines game last night, and
Jordan
we were just like, "Come
Clarkson.
on, Philippines!" They were so close, but lost a close one to the Dominican Republic. That would have been huge for
Oh,
Canada's cause if
huge.
Philippines won that. But we just don't know what's going to happen with Dominican Republic, and they could have an easier quarterfinal match, or they could meet the United States, right? We'll have to kind of wait till we see that unfold before we get too cocky or our hopes up for the
The,
Olympics. But
the
we got a ways to go.
the one good thing, and this is regardless of if Canada makes the Olympics or what, it does seem as though they'll probably gain a little bit in the rankings that after the end of the tournament. And the reason why Canada has such a tough draw is because they're ranked 15th in the world. And to beat number 5 team in the world, they're going to play the number 1 team in the world. I think at this point, Scott, they're going to be the favorite in that game. I don't know about you. I mean, they beat
Yes.
Spain in Spain.
Yeah.
Um, and so if those two
Oh,
things happen, Canada's ranking is going to
yeah.
go up. And I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
if they go really deep in the tournament, it's going to rise regardless.
Yeah.
But it,
I think they're favored against Spain. When you said number one team in the world, I immediately defaulted to the United States.
yeah,
So
I meant more in the
that's
rankings.
where my
Yeah,
my
yeah.
head
No,
is. But
it's
yes,
true. It's
Spain
always
is the
weird to
number one
say.
ranked team in the world. But yeah, I would say we should be favored against Spain after seeing what we saw today. But they're a great team, and they've got a fantastic coach who certainly did not show his cards in the friendly, but there are some areas that we can push and have a massive advantage against Spain. So
So,
we'll see how
so
that
Scott, you
goes.
didn't answer my question. So where do they end up in the end?
Where do they end up in the end? It's tough to call. I think this is a team. I still joke. I still think we catch like the United States in the semifinals. It just seems
Is
like
that
that's going to
is that
happen.
how the bracket works out,
We
or is it?
cannot we cannot face the United States until the
Yeah.
semifinals. But exactly, I think one of the posters we follow on Twitter today says that if we come through as the number one team, like if we go undefeated and the United States goes undefeated,
And then
we meet
make
in
the
the
semis.
semifinals. We meet in the semis.
Okay.
So they'd be the kind of the one coming out of their little
Yeah.
bracket. We're the one coming out of our bracket, and whatever it is, that's what crosses over. So
And
um,
Canada, USA, and at the World Cup in a semifinal or a
be
final
awesome.
would
Final would be
just
better.
be. I mean, a final would be obviously better. I feel as though I'd be so gut wrenched if they lost by 4 points in the final compared to
Hmm.
maybe a semifinal.
Hmm.
Because you
Hmm.
could just
Hmm.
feel that sweet glory
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
But that would be
Yeah.
such a fun game.
Yeah.
It's just going to be really tough because of the draw. But I do think they make the quarters, and they probably make um, the Olympics. We were talking about. I think I could say this with Mike Bartlett, the CEO, before the game last night. But just imagine if it's Canada Dominican in the 5-6 classification game,
That'd be
all
crazy.
the marbles to go to
Hmm.
the Olympics. There's a part of me that thinks, hey, this would be amazing theater. Let's
Yeah.
make it happen. Another part of me says just lose to Angola tomorrow or whatever,
Yes.
and get it done with.
Please.
That's what I want. But there's also a part of me that maybe the journalist and the storyteller and all that would be wow. That'd be I'm
Yeah.
sure a lot of people would want me to talk about the game.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, Scott, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll find a time throughout the tournament, give or take. And hopefully we do kind of another podcast maybe after Spain or something when it'll be a fun time, or maybe Canada against USA preview or post game or something. That'd be pretty fun. So
awesome. No, I appreciate it, Alex. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks again, man.